Hello, aviation enthusiasts, and welcome back to Histories of Airliners. Before the titans of aerospace, Northrop and Grumman joined forces in 1994, they carved distinct and impressive legacies, each leaving an indelible mark on aviation history, although neither company became a giant in the airliner industry. From Northrop's sleek and innovative designs, pushing the boundaries of early airliner performance, to Grumman's rugged amphibious designs, known worldwide for their reliability, these two companies were powerhouses of engineering ingenuity. This video delves into the fascinating pre-merger histories of Northrop and Grumman, exploring their iconic aircraft, the challenges they overcame, and the pioneering spirit that ultimately led them to become one of the world's leading aerospace corporations. Back in the early 1930s, Jack Northrop had a vision. He dreamed up the Northrop Alpha, a sleek all-metal monoplane that was way ahead of its time. It was all about streamlined design and making air travel faster and more efficient. With its cool multicellular wing and smooth lines, the Alpha was built for speed and distance. They wanted to use it to carry passengers and mail, and the first prototype, called the Alpha Model 2, registered as X-Ray 2 Whiskey, took its maiden flight in 1930. Though the Alpha showed real promise, it had its share of problems. The landing gear was a bit tricky, and having just one engine held it back. But even with those challenges, the Alpha was a major step forward for Northrop. He used some cutting-edge techniques like wing fillets and multicellular stress skin, which later became super important for iconic aircraft like the Douglas DC-2 and DC-3. Sadly, they only ever built one Alpha prototype, and to make things worse, this awesome plane, after playing a short but important part of aviation history, crashed on its second flight. They say it was because of a loss of an aileron in mid-flight. It's a real shame that such a pioneering aircraft met such an early end. The Northrop Gamma was a real step up from the Alpha. It was sleeker, stronger, and really pushed the limits of long-range flight back in the 1930s. This all-metal monoplane, built tough and with those classic lines, was meant to carry both people and mail. The prototype, November X-Ray 12265, nicknamed Sky Chief, became famous for setting all sorts of speed and endurance records. Pilots like Frank Hawks and Jacqueline Cochran used it to break records flying across the country and even internationally, cementing the Gamma's place in aviation history. While it was a record breaker and a great mail plane, the Gamma never really took off as a commercial airliner. Sadly, the Sky Chief itself was destroyed in a mid-air explosion during the 1936 Bendix Trophy race, though thankfully the pilot survived. It was a huge loss for aviation, but the Gamma's legacy as a pioneer in long-distance flying lived on. It was the mid-1930s, and Jack Northrop was on a roll, and the Northrop Delta was his next big thing. It was a sleek, all-metal monoplane, but with some serious upgrades. Think better aerodynamics, a more powerful engine, and a roomier cabin. Perfect for hauling passengers and mail. Those streamlining spats around the landing gear weren't just for show. They helped the Delta fly faster and smoother. Though it had a lot of potential, the Delta prototype was mainly used to test out new technologies and design ideas. A few Deltas did get to fly commercially, but not many. New airline regulations threw a wrench in the plans. They said no flying passengers or mail at night or over mountains with just one engine. That kinda limited the Delta's usefulness. The prototype itself had a bit of a journey. After doing its part in development and testing, it was leased to TWA. Sadly, it crashed in November of 1933, marking the end of an era for this innovative aircraft. Even though it wasn't a huge commercial success, the Delta helped pave the way for the modern airliners we see today. It is a reminder that sometimes progress takes a few detours along the way. Picture this. It's the mid-1930s, Long Island. A bunch of wealthy folks with fancy waterfront estates needed a way to get to the city without dealing with traffic. Grumman stepped up and said, "Hold my beer, we got this." And boom, the Grumman G-21 Goose was born. This rugged go-anywhere amphibian was a twin-engine monoplane with a high wing and a hull that looked like a boat. It could take off and land on both land and water, making it perfect for those hard-to-reach spots. The first Goose took off in 1937 and quickly became a legend. It was tough, handled like a dream, and could carry a surprising amount of stuff. The fact that it could switch between water and land like it was nothing made it a hit with everyone: private owners, the military, and even commercial folks, especially those living near the coast or in places where roads were, shall we say, optional. The Goose was so popular that it stayed in production for years, but the original prototype, after a long and successful career as a testbed and show-off plane, was eventually retired. Now here's the kicker. Instead of being scrapped or put on display in a museum, it was buried. Yeah, you heard that right. Buried near Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, at some remote oil site back in 1943. Where exactly? Nobody knows for sure. It's like a hidden treasure, just waiting to be rediscovered. So the next time you're in Edmonton, keep your eyes peeled. You might just stumble upon the final resting place of the pioneering Grumman G21 Goose. Just don't forget your shovel. The Grumman G44 Widgeon was like the Goose's little brother. Same great family, but a bit smaller and more budget-friendly. Grumman built it in the early 1940s, keeping the same winning formula: high wings, sturdy construction, and the ability to land or take off from water or land. But this time they used smaller inline engines. The Widgeon was a real jack of all trades. You could use it for personal trips, light cargo, or even some military missions. The first Widgeon took flight in 1940 and showed everyone what it could do. While it wasn't as famous as its big brother, the Goose, the Widgeon found its own crowd. Private owners loved it, small airlines used it, and even some military branches gave it a try. The fate of the prototype? Well, it wasn't as dramatic as some of the other aircraft we've talked about. It wasn't lost in a crash or buried in some remote location. Instead, it met a more common end for an old airplane. It was scrapped around 1947, shortly after its registration was canceled. It was a good run for the Widgeon prototype, even if it wasn't as glamorous as some of its fellow aviators. After World War II, Grumman decided to take their amphibian game to the next level. They created the Grumman G73 Mallard, a bigger, sleeker, and more luxurious version of its predecessors. This plane was all about comfort and style, perfect for executives and regional travel. The Mallard had a spacious cabin, powerful engines, and a high wing design, just like the Goose and the Widgeon, but it also had retractable landing gear, which was a big step forward for an amphibian aircraft. The prototype took its first flight in 1946, showing off its ability to handle both land and water with ease. While it wasn't as big a commercial hit as the Goose, the Mallard still found its niche. Wealthy folks loved it for personal travel and executive transport. Sadly, the Mallard prototype met a tragic end, as many airplanes do. After it was done with testing, it was sold a few times before crashing during takeoff somewhere in Canada in early 1951. It's a reminder that even the most advanced aircraft can be vulnerable to the unpredictable nature of flight. In the mid-1940s, Northrop was cooking up something special: the N-23 Pioneer. This rugged tri-motor transport was built for adventure, designed to land in those rough, short airstrips that other planes wouldn't dare touch. With its high wings, tough landing gear, and powerful engines, the Pioneer was ready to tackle any terrain, carrying passengers or cargo wherever they needed to go. And those massive flaps, they were like secret weapons, allowing it to take off and land in super short distances. The prototype took its first flight in 1946 and proved it could handle anything you threw at it. It landed on bumpy remote airstrips like it was nothing. But sadly, the Pioneer's timing wasn't the best. The post-war world was overflowing with old military airplanes, making it tough to find buyers. To add insult to injury, a big order from a Central American airline fell through, thanks to some political meddling, so Northrop ended up building only 23 test planes for the Air Force, called the YC-125 Raider. As for the prototype, it kept pushing the boundaries until the very end. In 1948, while testing a new tail design, it crashed during a test flight. It was a sad ending for a plane that was truly ahead of its time. The Pioneer may not have become a household name, but it showed the world what was possible when it came to rugged, go-anywhere aviation. In the late 1940s, the U.S. military needed a tough go-anywhere airplane that could handle both land and water. Grumman, always up for a challenge, took their earlier Mallard design and beefed it up to create the HU-16 Albatross. This amphibian was built for serious work with a focus on hauling heavy loads and flying long distances. The first Albatross, then known as the Pelican, took to the skies in 1947, and it blew everyone away with its performance. It was quickly adopted by the U.S. military and a bunch of other countries, and even some small airliners used it for island hopping and such. The Albatross was a real workhorse, doing everything from search and rescue to transport to hunting submarines. It earned a reputation for being super reliable and adaptable, kind of like the Swiss Army knife of airplanes. After a long career of testing and showing off its skills, the original Albatross prototype was retired and eventually scrapped. It's a shame that it's gone, but its legacy lives on in all Albatrosses that continue to serve around the world. In the late 1950s, Grumman decided to shake up the corporate transport world with their G159 Gulfstream. They wanted to create something bigger and fancier than anything else out there, and boy did they deliver. The Gulfstream I, as it was first known, was a twin-engine turboprop with a low-wing design, a comfy pressurized cabin, and powerful Rolls-Royce engines. It was fast, could fly farther, and didn't need a super long runway to take off or land. The first Gulfstream I took flight in 1958, and it immediately turned heads. It was the perfect blend of comfort, speed, and versatility, making it a favorite among CEOs, government bigwigs, and even some smaller airlines. It basically redefined what business travel could be. The Gulfstream I was a huge success, paving the way for a whole line of fancy Gulfstream jets. But sadly, the original prototype met a tragic end. Just like the Pioneer we talked about earlier, in 2013, it crashed during takeoff in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's a reminder that even the most successful aircraft can have an unpredictable journey. Wow, what a journey. We've seen some incredible aircraft from Northrop and Grumman, from those early pioneers like the Alpha to the iconic Gulfstream. These planes have changed how we travel and ship things worldwide. As we wrap up, let's give a shout out to the amazing people who made it all happen. The engineers, the visionaries, the risk takers who dared to dream big and push the limits of what was possible in the sky. They didn't just change aviation, they inspired generations to look up and wonder about what's beyond the clouds. Thanks for hanging out with me and exploring the world of Northrop and Grumman airliners. If you enjoyed this adventure, hit that subscribe button for more awesome aviation content. And if you want to support my work and get some cool bonus content, think about becoming a member or joining my Patreon. Your support means the world to me and helps me keep making these videos. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies and never stop exploring.